Welcome to our work session, April 2nd. Consolidated fee schedule updates with the Assistant City Manager, Emma Sagar, and Michael Osborne, our Finance Director.
Thank you so much, Mayor, Council President, and Councilors. Great to be with you. Michael and I are the main show for this work session, but we do have several directors here as well who touch parts of the fee schedule, so if you have questions about those, they'll come up and they are the experts. Before we dive into 75 minutes on fees, which I know you're really excited about, we wanted to just mention something to you. The pilot, which should be hitting mailboxes as we speak, have a little call out that's alerting the community that it's budget season. And on our website, Scott's going to scroll down to the bottom of the budget page, which this is what the pilot's linking to. We put up 2 new public-facing resources I just wanted to make sure you were aware of. The first one, if you want to click on that, Scott, is just a 1-page overview of the budget process, how the city puts its budget together, when the upcoming budget meetings are. We handed this out to CUAB last night as well. We're just trying to make sure folks know that this is a public process and they can tune in and engage. And the second resource down at the bottom there, we've been fielding a decent amount of questions lately about the development that's happening in the community and what that means for the city's finances. We put together this, it looks very text dense, it is very text dense, but hopefully informative 1-pager about why development is really important and great, but also the impacts of measures 5 and 50, and various incentive programs we have around development and how those impact the city's finances. So I just wanted to make sure you were all aware these resources exist. They are out there. We are pointing the public to them, and we're happy to answer any questions you have. Thanks, Scott. We can go to PowerPoint land. Right, so main interaction. So our presentation tonight is going to have kind of 2 components. The first is we're going to walk through the major changes that are being proposed on the consolidated fee schedule. Anything that's not discussed tonight or wasn't called out in the staff report, the plan is to keep those the same. For example, business registration. We're not going to talk about that tonight because we are recommending that we keep business registration rates the same over the next biennium. So we'll walk through all of those. The second part of our conversation, we would like to give you an update on the forecast as it's coming together to lead into the next biennium, because that's connected to one critical piece of the fee schedule, which is right-of-way fees. Staff has a recommendation we'd like to discuss with you tonight, and we want to share a little bit of the backstory and the forecast context for what's driving that recommendation. And just a couple kind of clarifications for tonight. We are not expecting decisions tonight. This is a discussion meeting. So please don't feel pressured to say yay or nay on various things this evening. I know we typically like to hold questions till the end. This is going to be a long one, and we go through a lot of things. So feel free to stop. We'll stop at the end of each slide and ask if you've got any questions. Well, we aren't expecting decisions tonight. It would be really helpful to get the feedback from you today for what you want to see out of us by that April 27th budget meeting. The fee schedule does influence the forecast, and the forecast influences the budget. So it's important for us that this meeting be one where we're daylighting some big questions for you and getting your insight so that we can roll that forward and be prepared for the budget committee. And we did talk to CUAB last night. They have seen all the slides that you will be seeing as well. And then just in terms of where this goes next, we talked fee schedule tonight. In the budget meetings, we'll give you a bit of an update on fee schedule, but you would vote to adopt the fee schedule on June 6th. What is the fee schedule? I think most of you know, but for folks tuning in, our consolidated fee schedule is kind of the master book of all the fees and charges that we levy in the city. What we're talking about tonight would go into effect on July 1st unless specified otherwise. We try to review the fee schedule at least annually, definitely with every biennial budget, but we tend to do kind of an annual update and refresh, and sometimes we update it more frequently throughout the year as needed. And the guiding principle behind our fee schedule is that it's trying to recover costs incurred by the city. So we are always looking to try to find that cost recovery point. Not that we're making money off people. We are covering the cost of administering city services. Okay, so so I'm going to go through section by section, and we'll take questions as you go. So the first section that saw any updates in the fee schedule was building fees. It's hiding behind the little Zoom box there, but what we are proposing to do this year is hold all fees level with the 2024 rates. That's a bit of a break from practice. The last couple of fee schedules, we've increased building rates about 2.5% to account for inflation. The building department feels, though, that they are financially stable. They don't need to increase those rates right now, and also recognize the pinch that folks are feeling across the board. The one other change, though, that the building department is recommending is there's a separate fee table for structural permits of single-family houses and new ADUs, trying to kind of incentivize the development of those standalone units. We're not seeing it used a lot, and it's not really in alignment with the policies we've adopted and the policy direction we're having towards more dense and multifamily or more middle housing units. So the building department is recommending that discounted table be removed. Are there any questions about the building fees?
How much of a discount was that?
It's like 25%.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And that was for the building permits that didn't apply to SCCs or anything? Okay.
Structural permits.
Okay.
I noticed it seems like in one spot, we switched the term single family to single unit, it seemed like. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
There was a push to do that. Angel Falconer was a big advocate for getting rid of the term single family. And so I do think you'll find some places.
It goes back and forth a little bit.
There's a little bit
like a
of
strikeout at one point where family and it was struck out and replaced with units. I just didn't know if we were consistent or if it meant something different that I'm not aware of.
Right, we should do a QC review just for that consistency throughout, but I believe single unit
Is that the term we use generally now?
Looking to my community development director.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on building?
to be honest, I had not realized we had that incentive, but it makes no sense with the middle housing push.
Okay, I'll move this forward. Engineering fees. Just some cleanup in here. There was duplicate parklet fees in a couple different tables, so that's the one of those has been eliminated, and it's very clear now that in the downtown fee section is where you find the parklet fees. And there have been some updates to erosion control fees to more accurately capture costs and be clear to folks needing those permits what will apply. Were there any questions or concerns about the engineering fees?
But you're saying they're not increasing, or they are increasing?
Peter, I might have you speak to that.
I can talk a little bit about the erosion control fees. So we are increasing the erosion control fees. We updated those to capture the time that we spend going out and doing inspections. To meet our regulatory requirements under our stormwater permit, we have to do 3 inspections. So there's like an initial, a midterm, and then a final inspection. So it takes some time and effort to go through that and review the plans. So we've adjusted those fees to better capture our time.
Can we move the Zoom box to the lower left? Is that possible?
Scott is on it.
Thank you.
But otherwise, yeah, it looks like. Oh, this table doesn't show us. Oh, I see. So otherwise, it looks like we're generally not increasing engineering fees either.
Yes.
Because they're
They're
felt
adequate-
to cover the
They're
cost.
adequately covering the cost to administer those services. Moving us forward. In planning, The planners did a little bit of cleanup. So they've added final plat and lot consolidation charges into the other land use applications table. They are recommending eliminating replats as a land division type. They've added a new fee for type 2 property line adjustments. And then there are some fines that are currently listed in Title 14, 17, and 19 that are in code. Planning is recommending we move those over the fee schedule and remove them from code for easier updates in the future. And then similar to erosion control, as Peter was saying, as we've done more pre-application meetings for major applications and seen how much staff time that is consuming, there is a recommendation to increase those fees to cover that cost.
I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
We will eventually see an ordinance to change the code then for the, to the move? No? Yeah?
For titles 14, 17, and 19, that's correct,
I don't
Joseph.
think you have
Yep.
to provide you an ordinance. And then the other question, those fines are, I suppose, punitive. They're a fine as opposed to a fee cost recovery. Is that true? Like if you do something wrong, you get fined as opposed to just a cost
it's-
recovery fee?
Yes, so these are violations of the sign code, the land division code, and the zoning code. So those are all listed as violations of any provision of those titles, putting the fine in here.
And is it a specific dollar amount or is it like up to 500 or something?
It is a
like that?
specific dollar amount. It is $100 for violations of the sign code, and it's $200 for Title 17, which is the land division code, and Title 19, which is the zoning code.
And we have other fines in the fee schedule as well.
We do, we have like library fines,
There's some tree code.
tree code fines.
Thank you.
And those are one-time fines, or those are like the kind that accrue daily or something? Doesn't say that.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are, they can accumulate, and some of them aren't. It's typically called out in code, so I'd have to look back at
So then,
the specific.
So then we would need some
Yeah.
footnoting or something
Yeah.
here to
That's about the
indicate
accumulation.
Yep.
that.
Any other questions or concerns on planning?
I was curious about annexations and why we would charge less for, I mean, as I understood it, the expedited was our way of trying to facilitate the people who have to annex for sewer. But we have the same fee whether they're expedited or non-expedited.
Looks like we have the same fee for expedited or non-expedited when there is no zone change or comp plan amendment required. But if there is a zone change or a zone change in a comprehensive plan amendment, that incurs further fees.
Other questions?
Okay. In our library and our tree fee sections, we've done just again some cleanup to try to make the fee schedule a little bit clearer for those who use it. There were 2 fees for library tables, I think one for each fiscal year, and Brent advised that we can consolidate that down to 1 because those fees are not, we don't expect them to increase over the biennium. There were a few also inapplicable old fees in the library section. There's a cultural pass that used to be given out to people, and if they didn't return that, we'd have to find them. It's now digital, so they can't lose it. It's great. And then just some language adjustments throughout the tree section to improve clarity. Were there any questions you had on those sections? Okay. SDCs and construction excise taxes. So staff are recommending that we adjust the SDC rates for water based on the updated methodology, which is on the regular session agenda tonight. We are recommending adjusting stormwater and transportation SDCs based on Seattle's construction cost index. We use Seattle's because Portland doesn't have a construction cost index. The 5-year average for the Seattle CCI is 5.64%. And then there is, the only other change in this section is around Bancroft financing for commercial SDC. So if people are looking to the city to provide financing there, the administrative fee for that was at 2%, which is low for the cost that it would incur on the city. This has not been utilized, is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's only a couple that have used it in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm. So, but raising that to 5% to represent cost recovery for finance.
I mean, maybe it's still to come. I guess it's still to come. Okay, I'll wait.
Within that increase, is it, what constitutes that increase? Is it staffing? Is it the amount of contracting work?
The 2 to 5% on the Bancroft financing. Can you speak to that, Michael?
It's the amount of work that we have to do administratively to do that. Plus the city's not a bank, so we want to incentivize if somebody needs financing for the SDCs that they can go to a bank. But from our end, it takes our staff time to administer it, to do that, keep it in administration. So we're just trying to recoup our costs, and 2% was just way too low. So we calculated that 5% was good to bring it up to date.
When was the last time that was updated?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. And how many FTE is that usually impact?
It impacts a little bit of Judy's time and a little bit of Kelly's time, so there's 2 staff members. I mean, it's not a lot amount of time, but it's just a lot of manual work. It's taken away from other activities that they could be doing.
Okay. So I think that gets at the core of what I'm trying to find out here is that, if we're increasing the fee to recover the cost of doing this service, then I'm wondering how that translates to the budget line item. So if you have a portion of 2 FTE that are doing the work, does that mean that we're using that additional revenue to bring on additional staff? Does it mean that it's an increase in the cost of labor?
Because this has been has not been utilized, I don't believe this is factoring into your personnel budget projections.
Correct. I think that in the last 3 years, we may have gotten 1, but when we get somebody coming to do this, it takes a lot of staff time away from things that we could be doing. So the better option is to go to a bank to get the financing, but we're trying to offset the costs of our staff time that it takes to do the work. We're not adding more people for it.
Because of the unpredictability of the usage of this, I don't think we are able to forecast, we need a quarter FTE more in the finance department. So in those times when this would come in and Judy and Kelly would have to pinch hit on that, and then you're looking at things getting delayed or people working overtime to compensate to get other pieces.
So it sounds like in part this is a deterrent.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this the industry standard for these types of commercial SDCs?
I can look into that. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's an underlying policy question that we maybe need to have a big broader discussion about, and with Bancrofting. I think it's something for people who don't know, that just means the city financing in this case, it's SDCs, I guess, but it also comes up with financing street frontage improvements or something. And it's the city providing financing for people. It was something we talked about at one point as wanting to encourage, because people who a block that isn't going to get sidewalks under safe, but decides they want to pay for their own sidewalks and create a local improvement district. It's a way to, make that sort sort of financially feasible for everybody on the block to do at one time and have a repayment, schedule that everybody has or whatever. I mean, I guess people could opt to just pay it as well. But I mean, I guess to me, yeah, there's some policy questions tied up in bankrupting and whether we want to encourage it or whether we want to discourage it. And I always thought we wanted to encourage it. Yeah.
Joseph, I think you wanted to weigh.
Yeah, and I don't know if I should come up to the table. I feel like I'm close enough, but let me know.
Get up here, Joe.
Just to add more, I think, context to the discussion, and tell me if I'm wrong. But part of the bankrupting issue that's occurred over the last couple of years is that interest rates have dropped down so low that bankrupting as a tool has been kind of obsolete. And the fact that people can get financing, can get cheaper money from banks versus the city. So that's kind of taken it. But then there's also this administrative side that is real, because I know that in order to account for that money over time is not just creating the tool, setting it up for someone to use and utilize, but then there's also the tracking process of making sure our books are good. I know that's been part of our conversations, but.
So along the lines of the policy question, I mean, should we be doing an equity analysis on this too? Do you find that people take advantage of this more often because they don't have access to traditional commercial financing through a bank?
The folks that I've talked to, and probably two in my time here, have been elderly folks that do not have a lot of income. And I don't think they've necessarily checked with the bank before they've come to us. They've heard that there's the city has a program, right? And so I've typically encouraged them, have you checked with the bank? Because as of right now, the interest rates are better than they are here. So, and that's usually I don't get a call back. When I get those calls, I don't know if it's the same for you, Michael.
We can do more, we can look more into this issue.
How do we set our interest rate for bankrupt financing then? That's,
So we use the bank prime rate, as published by the Fed Reserve, and then we tack on an administrative rate, and that's what we're proposing to increase.
I know places where I've worked in the past, 5% is always the standard admin fee that people use. So when we were evaluating that, the 2% just seemed low. And talking to Judy and Kelly, they're like, yeah, when you do this, there's a lot of steps that they have to go through. So the reasoning behind to bring it to 5 was just to recoup the admin fee.
and it's a percentage of the loan though, or the financing.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
It's a percentage of the rate that then is charged to the person doing the bankrupting.
I'm lost. So this is based upon the, I'm assuming this is the Fed's overnight lending rate?
The Federal Reserve rate, yeah.
That's the overnight lending rate, yeah. Which
The
obviously
bank prime rate.
fluctuates.
Yes.
And so if it's going to be 5%, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's at 5%. So what does this 5% mean to that 5%?
I think you're looking at 10%. It's, I will admit my ignorance here, but reading what's in the fee schedule, it'd be the bank prime rate plus the administration.
It's pretty obvious why I don't get it.
Yeah, even with the 2%, it doesn't make it competitive with the bank rates.
Okay. Thank you.
I think what I'm hearing is a desire to do some equity analysis on, I mean, we don't have many case studies of this, but how's it being used in Milwaukie? How's it being used?
I mean, I don't know if you have to go into that level of detail. I was mostly just curious about how the percentage rates are being attributed to the costs that we're recouping. Like where are we seeing this? Is it staff time, is it materials and supplies that,
Mostly staff time.
generally that's a question across the board. If we're talking about eliminating something, then I think it would be helpful to do an equity scan and just see if we're adversely impacting any populations in the city by doing that.
I am curious to know how it's being used and what traditionally how it's been used. If this is something that we can leverage to benefit communities, I'd like to just know more about it.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, it was probably when Alma Flores was community development director that we talked about it a fair amount as a tool for helping people pay for frontage improvements.
Right.
Because we were hearing how expensive frontage improvements were if you were adding, you know, or whatever. And this idea of a local improvement district. I have never known of a local improvement district in Milwaukee. But I mean, conceptually, it seems like a great tool, and I don't know if it's, you know, if it would be used more, if it were more widely known to be available. I don't know the answer to that, but yeah.
It'd be good to know what it can be used for, what
Sure.
it has been used for, and then
Sure.
where we can potentially leverage that to
Yeah.
benefit community members.
We can absolutely put that
I can also look around and see what other cities use as their rate as well.
Yeah, that'd be good too.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna have Peter come up to the table and talk about the utility rate recommendations that, hot off the presses, we were with CUAB last night. They unanimously endorsed.
Sorry. Last night, some changes came about?
No, they
No.
just, they presented to CUAB, they made changes.
Yeah, so if you recall, in, I think it was February budget committee meeting, we had come to council, or to the committee to discuss the recommended rate adjustments. And a follow-up on that was taking those rate adjustments, those recommendations, and then designing the specific rates for those different utilities. So with water, as you recall, we had recommended 3% increases for total revenue for 25 and 26 in each of those years, a 0% increase on stormwater, a 5.64% increase on SAFE and SSMP based off of the Seattle Construction Cost Index. And then we talked about the wastewater rate that we would target a 0% increase, but we would make some revenue neutral adjustments to the fixed customer charges to bring those commercial customers that have larger meters closer to the cost to serve those customers. We had lower, when we started this back in 2018 with the rate study, we had some significantly lower fixed customer charges for wastewater commercial customers, both on and multifamily, as well as on the water side, those larger customers. So what we did was we designed the rates to sort of target those things. And also we wanted to make sure that we kept in place our low income programs and our low usage program on water. So the impact of doing that was that target of getting the 3% adjustment on the water revenues and adjusting the fixed customer charges on those larger customers to bring them closer to the cost of service results in an average monthly residential water service increase of about 1.02%. But that's still overall with those other adjustments on the fixed customer charges for those larger customers still results in the 3% increase. We did a revenue neutral adjustment for wastewater, and which resulted in approximately a 1% increase for our average residential service, about 62 cents per month. No increase in the stormwater rates. We kept those flat. I think it's $29.47 per month. And then we increased the SSMP and the SAFE fee by 5.64%. There's a table in the fee schedule that shows you those impacts. Oh, there we go. So you can see from July 1, 23, our current fiscal year, to July 1, 24, for the average customer that uses 6 units a month in water, it's about a 0.59% increase on the total bill. And then moving into July 1st, 2025, about a 1.15% increase.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Well, if you just read across those.
I'm trying.
So this fiscal year, the average water bill is 139. It's gone up to 140.80, and then next fiscal would be 142.
And that percentage is in the left two columns over.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty darn flat.
That is, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And
But before we go on,
Yeah.
let me, Peter, this is more of a rhetorical observation or question about this Seattle construction index. You know, I think that these indexes are good. You know, they kind of fare out, you know, a lot of peaks and valleys and that kind of thing. But I'm just thinking to myself about right now, we probably had, you know, in that 5-year period, we probably had like 3 years in the middle where it was very high, when inflation was just rampant. And then maybe in that first year, which would have been 19 pre-pandemic, where we're really low. And so when we go into, you know, the next one, are we going to, is it all going to be loaded with, you know, the results of really high inflation? I'm trying to, you know, fast forward here about how that index works, you know, in the next biennium, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So I think looking back at our previous budgets for SAFE and SSMP, when we applied that construction cost index, the 5-year average in 19 was, for the FY 2022 budget, was 3.5%. In FY 23-24 is 4.6. The 5-year average that we have now is 5.64%. But I would share, if we did a 2-year average, it would be 7.24%.
Yeah.
So we're trying to blend, you know, trying to sort of reduce some of those big swings by having this 5-year average. And, you know, in some cases, it's actually to the detriment of the utility, because we don't necessarily capture the revenue based on those costs when we might need them.
Yeah, like 2 years ago, we certainly weren't.
Yeah.
Just an observation.
we do adopt, a biennium budget, but this goes back to, we should be reviewing this fee schedule
Okay.
annually.
Okay.
So we come to that.
It's just that this particular 5 years, I mean, the index is designed to fare out the peaks and valleys, but in this 5-year period, there were some wild peaks, you know?
There were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point.
And then I think we have a comparison table. I think that's also in the fee schedule. There should actually, there's 2 tables, one for the fiscal year 25, which begins July 2024. And we took a look at some of the regional municipalities that we have, that we've compared with in the past. And what we've seen this go around is we've fallen more towards the middle of the pack. If you recall, in previous bienniums, we were pushing up against Lake Oswego and Portland.
Yeah.
These tables, though, don't necessarily capture all of the other increases that these other municipalities may be putting in place. I don't have all that data, so it's the data that's available. In some cases, it is available for a couple fiscal years, but in some cases, it's not. But
So to go back to what you said, Mayor, I do think Peter has, through rate design and through conversations with the CUAB, done what he could to limit increases on residential utility rates.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah, we were third. Right, but actually, we were slightly higher than Lake Oswego at one point.
yeah.
What's driving the Lake Oswego? bus. Why are they going up so dramatically?
They don't have Peter.
I'm not sure, I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say, and we know that some cities actually, is that in our table? Is that in our
Yeah.
packet?
Yes.
It's page
It's in that
61.
big red
61?
line.
Yeah, PDF page 61.
Oh.
WS 59.
We also know that it's interesting because, oh, well, none of those are on here, okay. Because we also know that like Sandy and Malala, some of them are facing really huge increases for their wastewater because they're like under moratoriums on buildings. They don't have the Sandy, Malala, and Estacada, I guess, but they're not really metro, so they're not in this comparison. No, I mean, I think good job, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Wes. I mean, I think Wes
Wes,
gets some
yeah.
credit too.
Yeah, West.
Well, and Wes has held down the increases.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when it looked like the West increases were just like up, so it's
Yeah.
good that it's.
Our treatment costs are remaining flat over the next biennium.
Yeah.
And in the past, they had increased by, up to 5%.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Peter. I remember my first meeting after being appointed actually was voting on the budget, which I missed everything before that. and I remember just asking that we try by the next biennium to not do everything we can to not increase, to look at other ways to make up what we need to make up and not increase the fee. So I really appreciate what you do and what you've done. Because obviously not the first time. So yeah, I appreciate you very much, Peter. Thank you. That's big.
It is good.
It's where we were, it's a big deal.
Peter also gets the title of honorary finance team member. How many hours he has spent with Michael and I over the last months, deep in spreadsheet land. So thank you, Peter.
Maybe you guys usually are smarter. Gotta give you guys that.
Okay, so this next one, I want to say before I jump into numbers, we don't actually have a recommended change for you at this point on payment card fees. This is in the miscellaneous section of the fee schedule, where currently we have a limit on credit card transactions above $10,000. 2 weeks ago, we were in a work session and we shared with you some of our concerns about the growing amount of our budget that is going to payment card charges. And we wanted to provide an update on some of the data we've been able to pull. And then we're recommending that we revisit this discussion after the budget, just because we don't want to rush what needs to be a very thoughtful conversation about the ways that we can claw back some of this funding. But just to call out, so this table, what it's showing you, the second column there, that's for every transaction the city takes. Then we've broken it out by different types. So utility billing, court fees, permits, library fines, and other. So in fiscal year 23, about 88,000 transactions were conducted by the city. And about 53% of those, or 47,000, were done by either a debit or a credit card. So a little over half. We were talking last time about, well, what's that breakdown between, building permits versus utility billing? And I was actually a little bit surprised that the UB rate is higher. And so it's 57% or almost 60% of utility billing customers are paying by card. Permits, it's only 28%. The bottom two rows are showing you large dollar value transactions. So, and when it's blocked by the Zoom box, I'm not going to really remember. Great. So of all the transactions, only 1.5% were $1,000 or more and made by a credit card or a debit card. And over 3,000, it was only 0.5%. So one of the things we had talked to you about was, well, should we lower that limit from 10,000 down to 3,000 or down to 1,000? I think what this shows us is that actually wouldn't make a heck of a difference. The other thing we discovered in between our last two discussions is we can do a lot to try to enforce that limit, We can, the software systems that we control, we can program in to say decline the transaction if someone tries to pay by card. Acela, which is our building permit platform, which is a state-run program, we have no control over. So if someone could come to the desk and say, I want to pay my building fee for $3,000 by card, we could say no, and then they could just go home and do it online. So the enforcement of that is tricky.
And that's the 28%?
That's the 28%.
On the library fines, I thought Mayor Beatty exceeded $1,000.
I've never gotten it that high.
I feel like we need an audit.
I think we need an indictment.
It's a lot of action right there.
And then this data just shows you again, like kind of which types of transactions are really contributing the most of that pie. So as we mentioned, it's $260,000 in 2023 was paid either in bank charges or software transaction fees on card payments. About 160,000 of that come from utility billing, or 160 on the bank charges side. It's about 190 if you add them all together, and then about 47,000 on the building permit side. So just to kind of, yeah, this is just really meant to inform sort of where all this is coming from.
Can you go back?
Yeah.
Why is it that it's because of the state's Acela system that the business permits don't have the second
So
set of fees?
the utility billing and the court fees, we take via Tyler Payments, which is like it's a software program that we have. And so yeah, they charge us the transaction fee. All the building permits are run through Acela, which the state manages, so we don't get charged that software transaction fee. But it also means you can't really control Acela and say don't accept payments over a certain amount.
Well, I understand that, about here's where we are, here's what we can and can't do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would certainly be interested in changing that.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably some other cities that might be interested in it as well.
Changing it meaning negotiating with the software companies and the
Negotiating
credit
with the
card
state.
companies?
The state to say.
Over Acela.
And yeah, limiting what can be taken by card over the 4 feet. So I think in terms of the fee schedule, our recommendations at this time were not to make any changes, because we could lower it to 3. We just really don't think that's going to have a meaningful impact or be enforceable. We would like to proceed with an education campaign to really try to get, especially those utility billing customers that are paying by card, to move over to EFT. And then after the budget, we'd like to revisit this discussion. We did discover one neighboring city, Wilsonville, is charging a
$2 transaction.
$2 transaction fee. So we could look at either, that per transaction charge or a percentage. It's going to require more analysis and review, and so our thought was we should proceed with budget and come back afterwards.
And do they charge that even on utility bills?
Yes.
Everything? Yeah.
I think it's all credit card transactions.
Concerns with this approach?
Makes sense to me that take more time.
Okay. And then the last section that you won't see any edits to right now, the solid waste rates. This is consistent with how it happened in the last budget. We contract with a firm that does the analysis to produce the recommendation on solid waste rates. We will bring that back to you in the summer, and we'll do an update of the consolidated fee schedule at that point.
This is like with waste management, right? Okay. I actually have a question on that, because I remember, I don't know if I was on council yet or not, but Mayor Beatty, there was a discussion, and Mayor Gamp, former Mayor Gamp, there was a discussion about equitable rates with the trash, and I know at that time when they were doing it, they didn't have the time to really look into that and try to dissect all that. Is that still something we're pursuing on the trash rates? Because I know it's like, I guess it was, I'd have to look back at the meeting, but I know that he was really a big proponent for pushing more equitable rates on the solid waste.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what, I mean, there were a couple of issues. One was
On the
the,
recycling.
one was the different sizes of the bins
Yeah.
of the,
Yep.
that was the one where, yeah. Because, I mean, we got to a point with the individual residential bids where I think people felt like it was pretty equitable, but it was the, and I can't remember what the issue was now, but I do remember that. That was something we discussed pretty regularly.
Yeah.
With the,
Was it multifamily, you're saying, as opposed to residential, or what? What do you-
Oh, it was also like,
Oh, maybe that.
like there were cheaper rates for, I don't know, if it was construction, dumping or something, I don't remember.
Yeah, it had to do with the material and then the bin size.
Yeah.
And commercial.
Wasn't there an issue, Justin Garrity, city attorney, not Peter Passerella, wasn't there an issue with, there was a timing where the older bins were larger and they had switched over to a newer bin size, I think, or something like that, and there was a charging dynamic as to whether and when you signed up for service? That's my recollection.
Well, I mean, that would be, you mean for residential?
Yeah, for residential.
But I think that, yeah, I think with residential, we kind of got to where we thought it was an equitable approach. It was the dumpsters, it was the, you know, and it ended up being, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
It ended up being such a small part of the overall fee that I kind of think we just let it go,
Yeah.
of the overall, compensation for the haulers. But I think we just kind of let it go, but I do remember that we had.
What we can do, Counselor, is go back to that last discussion council had on solid waste rates. Kind of all good, we weren't here, so we'll get educated on what discussion was had, and then we're in the process of putting together the solicitation and the new contract to conduct the analysis, so we can make sure that whatever was discussed last time, we're accounting for in what we're asking the contractor to do this time around.
I have to say, when I first got on council, we would have a guy from the county come every year. His name was Rick Winterhalter, and he knew what was going on across the county, what other cities were doing. It was great. And then at some point, he wasn't coming anymore, and we were using a contractor.
Okay.
And
Chris-
I mean,
Chris Bell.
Pardon?
Chris Bell.
Chris Bell? Is that?
He does a lot of the garbage contracting. But Rick is still at the county.
Is he?
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know why that change happened, why the county wasn't coming in to be part of our discussion, but I thought it was enlightening to hear to get that perspective, and, yeah, so I'll just say that.
So just a garbage one-on-one question. The city sets its own rates?
For the hauling,
The city,
for the
so
franchise.
I'm gonna ask.
Yes, ultimately,
Yes,
yes,
yes.
but I mean, we have a goal of, there's a whole process of the haulers accounting for what it costs
They
them.
have to justify their
They have
costs.
to justify their costs, and they're expected to stay in about a 10% profit margin.
Because I thought Metro was the contracting authority.
Metro, we only set rates at the transfer stations where the haulers go and they drop it
Oh,
off. So
okay.
our rate has an impact on local garbage rates.
So you guys are at the wholesale level, we're at the retail level?
Yes.
All right.
And cities around the region will have different ranges of what they think is acceptable rate of return, as they call it. Don't say profit, they'll get on you about that. Rate of return. It's anywhere between 8 and 12%, but the cities set that,
Okay.
of the hauling.
That rate's set in the franchise agreement, right?
Yeah, well, I guess different cities do it differently, and Metro has nothing to do with hauling, and we're prohibited by state law from getting in hauling franchises, so we only deal with the transfer station and then the landfills, so we do the next part. And, but I think cities will do a franchise, and some cities do it more frequently than others. There's a state law that allows for a monopoly, that's why you can go into waste management, it can do the whole city. And that's because of the efficiency of having one, route truck, so you don't have 10 garbage companies coming into your street to get everyone's different garbage bin. So that's the reason for it. But I don't know how frequently we do our hauling franchises are they're cumbersome. It takes a lot of negotiation, as you can imagine. And so most cities don't change their haulers. They just, like, I bet we've been with Waste Management for years and years and years.
Well, when I first was elected, we had 5 haulers in the city. Like where I live was served by what was called Oak Grove Disposal. Waste Management had some, anyway, there were 5 haulers, and one by one, Waste Management has bought them.
Consolidated.
Yeah.
We're down to
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 big companies now.
Yeah, and so I think we have 3 haulers now, but the other 2 are both just little tiny bits of town.
Portions of our city,
Yeah.
if you looked at a hauling franchise map.
Yeah. I think they're technically Waste Management we got a percent, didn't we get a percentage? Was that last year when you guys were here? No? You're all looking at me like this is Greek, so I guess it was before you were on council, but we got a percentage, and Waste Management is like 70% or something of the city. And that has bothered me all along because of monopoly power. And that's why I think it's useful to have the county here to, like, and maybe this other contractor does it too, but to be a reality check on the rates that they tell us, on their costs.
Yeah, I think they do a composite. They don't do it per city. I think they do like a North Clackamas composite. This is what it generally costs to haul. And they look at the various, I think they actually look at various haulers and then they create that composite. So Waste Management may be more expensive and the local shop is a little less. Yeah, but then they can create a rate, because I think Milwaukie, I'm guessing without looking, that we only have one garbage rate, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's Waste Management or the other 2.
No,
Same garbage rate, yeah. But you can imagine that Waste Management has a different cost center than a smaller, but we just do a composite because it's easier. So I think that's what Chris Bell does for the county that maybe Rick used to do, and now they just contract it out potentially.
Yeah. But it sounds, it's good to know that Rick is still at the county, so
Yeah, he's a great resource about it. He's excellent.
How good was that?
we probably need to keep going. The best is yet to come. The juicy is yet to come. Okay, so that ends part 1.
Well, wait, we haven't
Yes.
talked about business registration.
Okay.
So, as I read the chart, we're raising it in year 1, but not in year 2?
No.
We are not, so we're carrying the 2024 rate forward. It's kind of a confusing red line. We've copied that over into the first column, which we've changed from 23 to 25. We are holding business registration at the rate it is currently.
And why are we doing that?
We heard a lot of feedback from people that said that we have a higher business registration cost than other cities. I think Gresham was put around. So because we were at the higher end, we decided to keep it constant.
Well, I'd like to see some analysis of that personally. I think,
I can do that.
I mean, we had a long conversation about, trying to do a business tax. And this was the compromise, because there were a lot of headaches to doing a business tax. But and maybe we need a tiered thing for smaller employers, smaller businesses or something. But
Well, it's tiered now based on FTE count, correct?
Right. Well, I'd like to see compare.
We can put that comparison together. I think this is actually a good segue into what we are going to talk about now, because we have a revenue problem. And what we tried to do throughout that whole part 1 that you saw is cover costs, but also eliminate increases to the extent possible, because we have a proposal to change a fee that would have a substantial impact. And so we wanted to balance that out with holding other fees constant, but we can definitely look at that comparison and explore changes to that. Okay. So this is just a little bit of context setting. You guys have heard a lot from us at budget committee meetings to date as we're developing the 25-26 biennial budget, and we're excited to share that with you starting on April 27th. But to kind of let you in a bit to what's in my mind and Michael's mind as we put this together are sort of 3 North Stars. One is we want to achieve or advance financial stability so that we are in a good position now into the future as a city. The way you do that, one important way you do that is to be fiscally responsible. And so we really have tried to tighten wherever possible and plan realistically for the future, so we're not left with a big bomb in the next biennium. And
And then third, we know how important this community's adopted vision and policy goals are, and so we want to make sure that while we're advancing stability and we're being responsible, we're also not hamstringing ourselves. We can't do new things and make investments where we need to advance those policy goals. So those are sort of the three things we just keep coming back to as we weigh up our budget. Also, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but we've been clear in our budget committee meetings to date that we're feeling the squeeze, and we aren't alone in feeling that squeeze. These were just a couple snapshots I took out of the 2024 League of Oregon Cities State of the Cities report. It just shows you how much things have tightened in the last couple years. So back in 2022, 61% of Oregon cities said, yep, I feel like our general fund is keeping pace. That's down to less than half. The pie chart, it's saying, have you seen an increase, decrease, or no change in city service demand? Over 2/3 are saying they're seeing an increase. We definitely know, we feel like we're seeing an increase on city services. And then I thought this quote from Canby was also telling, the pandemic years were interesting. They were really hard. They led to huge increases on service demand, but there was also an influx of federal dollars to help us get through. Well, those dollars are drying up. And so we're kind of back to that, we're scraping every penny, we're digging under every couch cushion. And you guys know why. Inflation and rising costs, just the cost of doing business, are going up. Property tax limits, measures 5 and 50, really do put us in a bind, and that's why we put together that one-pager that is now on the budget website, explaining that to the community. Pandemic recovery, as I mentioned, just the demands for service have gone up and stayed up. And so we're feeling it. Our 5-year forecast, and this I hope is not a surprise because we've tried to be talking about this with the budget committee the last several times we've met, but it shows challenges. Without new general fund revenues, which is the scenario you see here, we're going to have to start cutting services in the next biennium, not the one that you're adopting for right now. We are in the black through fiscal years 25 and 26. But you'll see we start going into the red in our fund balance in FY28. We're really at the line in 27. Again, we just talked about a lot of the reasons why. Those future costs, they're going up faster than our revenues are increasing. If you look at our revenue line, it's like this, and you look at the cost line, and it's like this. At my last employer, they called that the jaws of death. It's really awesome. The other thing is, budgets, you may, if you've been around for a while, you may say, well, we've seen this before. We see it in the red always, and it always, the next time, it's still out there, and it's still 3 or 4 years out there. What has changed and why we're concerned is in the past, we've spent about 85% of our budgeted materials and services. For this fiscal year, it's looking like we're going to expend 90+%, and some departments are 95%. So we're just to get all the work done, we are having to spend the money.
So, and let me ask you a question before
Yep.
we move on from this. You said that the current budget, fiscal year 25 and 26, which we've not adopted yet.
Which you've not adopted yet.
Is, we're okay, but does that mean it's taking into account all of the proposed fee changes that you are bringing to us?
Thank you for clarifying that. This is taking into account everything we just discussed in part 1, but this does not, this is if we hold our right-of-way fees flat. Okay, so if we keep that at 5% on our energy providers, this is the scenario.
And within that, are we also holding true to the goals that the city has identified, the staff that we have tied to those goals? I'm thinking about the climate goal, our equity goal. That's all staff for those initiatives is included in this
Staff
scenario?
for those initiatives is included in this scenario, but we have really, to hold the line on M&S, which was the direction given to all departments, and we weren't able to completely hold the line, I have to say. There are just some, the cost to keep our buildings lights on. We have to pay those bills when they come in. Those are some places where we have gone over. Some contracts that we can't get out of that have some escalators.
IT subscriptions.
But everywhere else, we've held the line or we've cut. And even when you hold the line, with the inflation we've seen, it's a service cut. This scenario you see here, and I do want to emphasize the draft watermark on that. This is not the final forecast. Every day it tweaks a little bit as we put some more things in. But this does include the equity and the climate positions in there for the next biennium.
Does it also include an appropriate buffer for labor negotiations that we are conducting?
I am concerned about that. We are putting in assumptions to this that are, it's a tough time. It's a tough thing to do a budget around. We don't want to overly influence, or we don't want to influence what's happening at the bargaining table. The assumptions that are in the personnel here are, they both have salary increases, but also benefits increases. We inform that with some historical and some market trends that we're seeing. This isn't a massive deviation though from previous forecasts. So depending on how labor negotiations go, this could be a worse picture.
So I guess I appreciate that at least the next biennium, or this, the one that we're planning for, is not in the red. I appreciate that. But also don't want to say we're good, because there are a lot of variables that are still in play. And so I guess, I don't know. I feel like this is still a dangerous space that we're in.
We would completely agree. We would completely agree. This gives us a lot of heartburn. It gives us a lot of heartburn, particularly with the unknowns we've talked about. And what this also says, if we adopt this budget, that means we have to cut, the next biennium, it's not hold the line, it's service reductions. What those reductions would have to be are the things you see here. These are our general funded programs. It's public safety, it's goal progress work, including our current goals or potential future goals and future planning. It's response and turnaround times. We really pride ourselves in Milwaukie on being a customer service oriented city. And those are general funded administrative functions. And if we have to start cutting IT programs, that also slows our abilities down. Facilities maintenance, repair, and accessibility is something that we haven't been able to budget for to the extent we would like to because of the hold the line direction and need. We had a CUAB member last night who said, well, I think there's a lot of accessibility improvements you need to do at this building. We don't disagree. We just are struggling to put into the budget, and then our community programming.
And so you're saying without the approval of new revenues that you're proposing, in part this evening, that we will see cuts across all of these areas?
Yes.
Costs are rising faster than revenues.
What is the amount of additional revenue that you hope to gain from the proposed increases?
I welcome you to give an answer on that. I also want to say we aren't trying to jump the gun on the budget conversation we're going to have on April 27th, and we would like to have the full budget committee. The shortfall problem, if we go back to this forecast. Michael, do you have a thought on kind of what the target revenue we would be wanting to stabilize us through the 5-year?
Well, actually, I want to take one step back from that. Let's assume that our fees stayed constant. That, because that's actually the forecast before the fix, right? You're coming. It's difficult in terms of the way that my brain thinks is like, all right, let's follow this process of we have an idea of what the problem is, and then we come in with a solution to the problem, but it feels almost like the solution to the problem is being presented this evening without fully understanding the issue.
I completely hear you. So we decided that we wanted to daylight this issue today prior to the 27th so that you weren't caught off guard by what we're going to be bringing in our budget message on the 27th. We aren't looking for a decision tonight. We recognize that you're going to need to see what is the pain being felt across our departments before you weigh in on an answer here. So we recognize it's a bit cart before the horse, but because we were discussing the fee schedule and this is one of our potential, a few revenue moves we could make, we wanted to share the forecast update with you.
I appreciate that, and I also realize that across our entire organization, even just the process of putting together the budget creates stress and anxiety for all of the departments and all of the staff. So I feel like feel like even just seeing this, where it looks like we're going into a biennium with a balanced budget, that's not, I don't feel like that's actually representative. And I'd rather actually take a step back and look at the entirety of the picture and then be able to look at the possible solutions and plug those in.
Sure.
But I feel like you've done a lot of our homework for us, but it's leaving me with a feeling of blind spots.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I'm not sure if others are feeling that way, but I think that's where just the dissonance of this particular slide was sitting for me.
Yeah, I entirely take that point, and that's why I should have said again when we started this part of the presentation. We knew you typically would not get a forecast update when you have your fee schedule discussion at this meeting. I don't think this has happened in the past, but we felt like because this was such that this does change. This is a move that changes some of the budgetary conversations. We wanted to provide that context for you now, to give you some time to think about it before the budget conversation.
I think in past years, in the past budget, it's always been the 5th year that we go into the red, and this has always been coming. It's just coming faster now. Now we see it starting in year 3, year 4. And we're just trying to daylight it so that the sooner we talk about it, the sooner we try and work through solutions, revenue solutions, expenditure solutions. The sooner you make those decisions, the easier the outcome is.
I was also in the last meeting, you provided us with the quarterly update, right, that packet?
Yeah.
I didn't see in there where it showed, I see where it shows our current balances in certain funds, right? But I don't see where what's considered healthy and what's considered overly healthy in those funds, right? Because I'm also looking at if we're overly healthy in some of these funds, then maybe that's a way to fill some of these shortfalls and put it back into.
Well, one, we're only speaking the general fund with this.
Right, I understand.
And the other funds, you can't make transfers.
No, I'm not saying that, but it would be nice to know where
What
we a
the,
little gluttonous in certain funds are. Because I remember having a conversation with Ms. Ober about those funds, and at one point we had quite a bit excess funds in certain, or excess funds in some of those stormwater funds.
Well, I think that's partially why we're not seeing increases
Yeah.
No, right, I
in
understand,
utilities.
but it's still good
right?
to.
I mean,
right.
John Stahl, when he was on the budget committee, brought that up every time.
But it's good to know what those
That we
numbers
had
are.
too big of a carryover, too big of a cushion.
I mean, we don't even, that's the thing, I don't know what our cushion is, so that's all I'm asking. Is if
We
get
can
that
definitely
information.
provide that
Yeah,
when we meet on the
thank you.
27th. Just keep an eye on the clock, because I know you guys have to go into exec in a few minutes. I would love to just kind of get us through and.
So this slide, what you're saying here is what happens this budget, or what happens in 2027?
Well, we're starting to feel the pinch of these in this
Okay.
budget,
Okay.
but then we'd have to be looking at, rather than holding the line, at reductions in the next if we don't get new revenue.
Oh, I interpreted that as without new revenue that we would be approving in the fee schedule. We will see cuts in this biennium to these areas. Is that not what you're saying?
We are doing our best to maintain service levels, but in a hold the line situation, we're holding the line on our facilities budget. The accessibility example is a good one. There are upgrades we would like to be making to this building that we, in a hold the line budget direction, to stay in the black through this biennium, we aren't able to do. So it's a very much a belt tightening and service crunch in this biennium, and then it would be cuts in the following biennium.
Okay, so.
And we'll have more specifics on all of that when we go through our departmental conversations.
So without the increase to revenues in this biennium, then you're saying that we're on track to maintain staffing for all of the goals and for public safety?
In our current budget, yes.
Okay.
So, what I mentioned this a couple of times, we've held the line or cut materials and services where possible. We're seeing no net FTE increases, and we're developing a capital improvement plan that reflects our capacity to deliver.
Something to realize in the hold the line budget is that we're saying there's no increase in expenses, but that also means it's a decrease because the cost of doing business now is more than it was 2 years ago, and we're holding the same amount. So we're asking departments to do more with less.
And on the 27th, will we receive like that analysis by department so
Yes.
that we have
Your
actual line
your
items?
narratives and your line items for every department. So what we're really talking about is that stabilizing over that 5-year forecast. Why we wanted to daylight this today and bring that forecast to your attention is because we really are concerned about how close that going into the red figure is. One way to buy us some time and help with that stability is to increase the right-of-way fee on energy providers from 5% to 8%. That would help limit cuts to police facilities and other general funded departments in the next biennium. And it would help us provide some ongoing funding to help institutionalize the existing goal work and set the foundation for new goal work. So Councilor Stavanger, we have currently put the climate and equity positions in the next budget, but in terms of setting a foundation for taking on new goals or new work, we're concerned about that if we don't have additional funds in this biennium. So this is that same forecast table if we went up to the 8%. So what you'll see is rather than going into the red in fiscal year 27, we're going into the red in fiscal year 29. It keeps us into the black a little bit longer, but it doesn't solve all the problems because of broader structural financial concerns. It also, one thing about this strategy, so we've heard a lot of questions from the public about development going on and what that does to the city's financial resources. For a variety of reasons, measures 5 and 50, but also the URA, we don't always see that per unit increase that you would expect from that. A right-of-way fee, which would be put on PGE and Northwest Natural, and then to a degree is passed on to customers, helps us capture some costs of the increased service demands of that new development. We did want to show you what some projected impacts on average consumers might be if you wanted to increase that right-of-way fee from 5% to 8%. Peter, again, honorary finance team member, helped put these projections together. So what this is looking at is looking at what piece of rates PGE and Northwest Natural pass on to their customers. The yellow rows are where the average residential consumer in Milwaukie uses, 800 kilowatt hours monthly of electric. They would be going from $2.22 to $6.67, so a $4 monthly increase. And Northwest Natural, the average is 50 therms per month. That would be an increase from 184 to 461, so 277.
Fee on, that's the current right-of-way fee. Just
This is the current fee paid by the residential consumer.
Yeah. Do they do that as a line item?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. So just again, what we think as the staff recommendation this right-of-way increase delivers, that it does help preserve financial stability further into the 5-year forecast. It helps us institutionalize our progress on climate and equity throughout the next budget and provide that foundation for future goal work.
So I guess we saw some numbers once before and I couldn't read those numbers in your chart. But the numbers that kind of an increase gave us, I thought was like was under $1 million, was like $700,000 or $800,000.
It's 900,000.
How much?
900,000.
900,000.
Which would increase every year, but in the first year,
In the first year.
So if we if we use that to stabilize our if we use that to that's not the word you used, institutionalize, but regularize our climate and equity work and create those, secure those two job, FTE, and then we set new goals and we hire 2 new people to do whatever those 2 new goals are. Is there still money beyond that for sort of the big, broader stabilization you're talking about?
This is not a long-term, this buys us a few more years of stability into the forecast. It would prevent those major cuts to those general funded programs in the next biennium, but it's still, we're concerned about years 4 and 5 out there, and this is a revenue squeeze being felt by cities across Oregon.
It helps the problem, it doesn't solve the problem.
But I think if I'm picking up what you're putting down, does it codify the positions for those 2 goals in the ongoing budget so that those are in target asks for the next biennium, and council and future councils can move forward with setting new additional goals?
We believe it provides the stability that would allow the council to take on new goals. We, in terms of codifying positions, I mean, it would, I can't predict what future councils are going to do, but we have built those positions and those programs into the budget, and we feel strongly that this revenue move helps to institutionalize those positions, that programmatic work through the next 2 bienniums, and allow that ability for you to take on additional work while preserving stability across the other general funded departments. Anne's here.
Hi, friends.
Hi
You
there.
guys have
Who are
one.
you? Are you new?
Yes. Been here lately? No. You do have an executive that's about 5 minutes late, and you guys are gonna need to do about 5 minutes early. So I recommend wrap it up.
We'll see you on the 27th. Yeah, we wanted to daylight this for you so that you weren't having, you weren't surprised coming in the 27th, but we'll be showing you it. We'll continue to kind of work on these scenarios. All the detail you're craving about service impacts and the detailed narratives in the departments will be available on the 27th, but we really wanted to make sure this was not a shock to you, and you see it in a few weeks.
So I want to make sure I understand, the 27th, you have the big binders.
Provide you the budget.
And then you do the budget message.
But the actual department by department stuff happens on May 4th.
It happens on May 4th, but you'll have all the information, all the narratives, so you can read them and prepare questions in the week in between.
We also have May 11th as a 3rd date, just in case, and because this is serious, we might have to use that this year.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Earl.
Yeah, thank you guys.
That was fun.
Harbingers of Zoom. Okay, I have to read a little script here. After this work session, council will meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statutes 192.6602A to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent. And with that, the work session is adjourned.
We moved it or stayed?
You're going to the conference room next to the elevator.